Okay, we are live now. Welcome, everybody. This is our next segment of Soldier of the Hour. Today we have Major Hines. First name is Tiffany. I invited her to the show because I think she has a very unique and faceted Army career to tell us about. She is a human resource officer. She's been in for 16 years, and she's currently stationed at Texas, somewhere in Austin. She's working with the Army Future Command. So we're going to learn a little bit more about that. I've been in for 15 years and I've never heard of that command. So I'm excited to learn more. If I didn't say already, she is a 42 hotel. If you're looking for the enlisted side, it's going to be a 42 Alpha. She is a senior human resource officer. Thank you, Major Hines, for joining us.
Thank you, Sergeant Anderson. So I am super grateful, and she told me she was going to cut me off, and she did. I am super grateful. Sergeant Anderson reached out to me. We had many days doing hardcore PT at Fort Polk and sweating out in JROTC in the box. So do you want to jump back in before I get started?
Yes, I'm playing around with this new software program, so I'm trying to be super technical while I'm still talking to you, so trying to play with that. Also, the reason why I invited you, because I personally know you, not on a personal level, but on a work level. So I was at Fort Polk, was where we met, Louisiana, and 3rd Brigade 10th Mountain was getting ready to deploy. Just brand new, lost little NCO, running around trying to get CBRN stuff put together, and I kept running into you, and your personality is awesome. You're one of the most hardworking people. Every time I come by your office, it didn't matter if it was early morning or late night, you were there working your tail off, and your entire office would be off. And I'm like, Major Hines, what are you doing here? I mean, I'm looking for a cop I have met. So thank you again for taking some time out of your busy schedule, especially in the position you're at. I mean, you're in charge of, I want to say in charge of, but you track and coordinate and make sure 36,000 people are getting taken care of with their paperwork and other issues. So that's an amazing defeat right there. Thank you. So we'll get this party started. Ma'am, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. So I am a Louisiana native, go Tigers, brat. My mom married an Army guy, and then I became an Army spouse, and then active duty, and now I'm an Army mom, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. Ironically, was not a big fan of sports not sports. I was a big fan of sports. Wasn't a big fan of PE in school, in high school. And that led to option of PE versus JROTC. And so I did the JROTC instead. And that was a snowball that turned into ROTC, Army. And 16 plus years later, here I am. A few places I've been at throughout my career, and I've bounced back and forth to a few places for several reasons, which I'll talk about as well. But Fort Hood, Fort Bliss, Iraq, Fort Jackson, Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Where else have I been? I think that's and of course Fort Polk, like Sergeant Anderson talked about. So, and I've gone back and forth. I've been at Fort Hood 3 times, and I've been at Fort Knox 3 times.
Yeah, that's crazy. And now I've been at both of those places too. Time frame. So it's just, the Army really is a small world. And you meet people and you're like, I was there. What year were you there? And you're like, oh man, okay, that's why we missed each other.
Yep.
So that's incredible. But yeah, you had a busy career. You jumped around PCS everywhere. So what made you join the Army versus the Navy, Air Force, Marines, or even into the service itself?
I would say it was several things. Firstly, I was in an Army JROTC program and didn't really come from a family with a ton of money, didn't have a college fund set aside, needed to figure out what the heck I was going to do with my life. So in high school, decided I wanted to travel. I never really left the state of Louisiana. Actually, I don't think I left at all until I was probably 18. So New Orleans was about as big city life as I got. Actually, very small side note. I remember going to New Orleans when I was like 11 or 12, maybe 13, and I saw maybe a 5-6 story building, and I was like, "Whoa, look at the big buildings!" So that puts into perspective small town living. Lake background, woods, yeah,
swamp, alligators.
Exactly. So, yes. So while I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I knew I wanted to explore. I wanted to get out of the state. Although I love my state and I love the food and I love my sports in Louisiana, I wanted to travel. I didn't really know what I wanted to do as far as a career, but I just wanted to travel. Without finances for college and without really a plan in place, I followed the ROTC track and did a scholarship, full ride, which was amazing. Didn't have to pay anything. In fact, I got a stipend every month just for spending money, which was amazing. And also then, of course, I was with my husband. I've been with my husband since I was 16, and he was already, and trying to do another service would have been a little bit challenging. So I followed with the Army ROTC. I actually went to LSU, go Tigers again. Absolutely. And they have an Army ROTC and they also have an Air Force ROTC. But of course, I was on that Army track. And then I come from a strong military background. My grandfather was a retired staff sergeant in the Army. My big brother, let me sidetrack again. I have 9 brothers and sisters.
Holy cow.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Louisiana, we have lots of babies.
You have 3 kids. Are you working more?
Say again.
So I know you have 3 kids. Are you working on more?
Absolutely not. That factory is closed. So I have enough brothers and sisters. I'm good. So of the 9 siblings, my brother is the only one older than me, and he's 2 years older than me. He actually went into the Army right out of high school. So again, more Army background. And I have my 5 sisters, but one of the 5 actually went into the Army as well. She was a 42. And I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. And then I have a cousin in the Navy and a cousin in the Marines. So a lot of military in our background and very, very, very pro-military. We're a strong Army family, though, even though we have the Navy and the Marines. So,
do you pick on them? Since you have more Army people, do you pick on the Navy and the Marines when they come home?
Oh, absolutely. Always.
So during LSU, what was your degree path looking like? You did an associate degree at a community college and then transferred to LSU to finish off your bachelor's?
Nope. I actually went, this is a unique situation I found myself in because I had no way to go to college, and then I jumped to have 4 scholarships. So I had a scholarship to Tulane, full ride in New Orleans. I had a full ride to Syracuse in New York, and then I had a full ride to LSU, and then I had a partial to Arizona State. So again, wanting to get out of the state, Syracuse was my number 1. It was a nursing ROTC scholarship, and initially I think I wanted to do pre-med, and I wanted to do OBGYN. I wanted to deliver babies. Mm-hmm. This was way back before I had babies, and that path changed very quickly once I had a baby. So I ended up staying in Louisiana because I was already with my husband, and he was at Fort Polk at the time. And it was about a 4-hour difference. So it was the closest to trying to have a long distance relationship that was feasible while I still had that ROTC scholarship. Mm-hmm. And so my major kind of changed a few times. I was pre-med, and we were blessed with our oldest son my freshman year in college. Not necessarily in my original plan, but things change. And we got married my freshman year, I think my second semester, and 6-7 months later, 8 months later, had a little boy, and that drastically changed everything. So I actually went about 1.5 years in LSU, and then I transferred here to Texas, ironically, right down the road from where I am now. Mm-hmm. And I ended up graduating from Texas A&M Central Texas, right off of Fort Hood. So it was one of the smaller branches there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, did you have to take any time off during the pregnancy? I'm not talking about like right up until the point of giving birth, but you were still doing college. You didn't take any time off for that, right?
Okay. So no, that was a struggle. Life got real. So my husband at the time, which I should clarify, my husband is enlisted or was enlisted. He retired as a first sergeant. And as you know, a lower ranking enlisted does not make a lot of money. So trying to go to school, and my husband at the time, I think he was an E5 sergeant, and he did not make a lot. So we had an 800 square foot apartment. I was working at Walmart as a cashier. I was donating plasma twice a week to pay childcare. We had government WIC assistance for baby formula. The struggle was real. We were not handed anything. We worked hard, and I did take off 1 semester, and that was just initially after I had him, just to get back on my feet, and then also transferring my scholarship. So I had a full ride, several full rides, and when I transferred to Texas, it was such a small branch of A&M that they didn't have the funds to support my scholarship. So I had to pay out of pocket for, I think, 2 semesters. And then once they had their funds, they were able to pick up that scholarship. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah. and that was for your bachelor's. You finished your bachelor's. Now, did you do back-to-back for your master's, or was that during your time in the military?
I was absolutely not back-to-back. Being dual military and then having, there's no way I've done my master's back-to-back. That was the plan, but again, plans change, life happens. I challenged myself, really crazy mission. I don't know why I did it the way I did it. I wouldn't change it now. I decided to do my master's while I was deployed during my second deployment to Iraq. So about 2 weeks prior to deploying, I signed up with Army Ed, Army EDU, and started doing classes nonstop. So while we were deployed, I would work a 12-hour shift, and then I would sit at my desk and I would do my homework until all hours of the night. And I finished about a week before we redeployed, and I didn't take any classes off, any time off. I just had back-to-back classes the entire deployment. So it was about 13 months.
Wait, how long was your deployment?
13 months.
And you got your master's degree finished in that time frame. That is
so I did. Well, this is it's because of the Army though. It wasn't a normal master's program. What it was, but the Army helped me out. So it was a master's in HR management and leadership. Because I was an HR officer and I had been to AG, Adjutant General HR professional schooling, they gave me so many credits towards that master's degree. So that was kind of the reason why I leaned towards that. I still had quite a bit, and it was very, very crunching. I mean, no time off whatsoever. I finished.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but yeah, I condensed an entire master's program literally into 13 months.
If our viewers don't know, oh, by the way, viewers, if you're watching this, you have a comment, please put them down and we're going to answer them live. Okay. Don't wait until the end of the segment. Ask them now and we'll get them answered. Now, most of our, and I'm jumping around a little bit too much, but forgive me on this. For me, I've been deployed quite a few times. And all of my cycles are a 12-hour shift on, 12-hour shift off. But even with your 12 hours off, you're still doing PT, you're still doing personal hygiene, you're still doing odd ends to get ready for the next shift. So for you to be able to do schoolwork for however many hours a day with your workload, that, oh my God, like how much sleep do you get?
Not, but I will say it helped pass the time because I was away from my son. I was away from my husband. We were actually deployed at the same time. He was deployed to another part of Iraq. It was about a 6-hour time across the country to get to where he was. We didn't get to see each other very often, even though we were both there. So vice being depressed and sad that I missed my kid and I wanted to go home and I didn't have my husband and he was right down the road, but I couldn't see him. It was a motivating factor to, I mean, if I wasn't sleeping or PTing, like you said, there really wasn't anything to do. I could have sat in my room and watched a movie on my computer like everybody else did, but I just focused on school the entire time. So it really, I mean, it helped. It sucked. It was hard, but it helped pass that time. And I came home with a master's degree.
Right. I mean, I'm struggling trying to finish my associate's degree, but we won't get there. Okay. All right. So you did the JROTC thing. Great program for those who are looking for, the degrees paid for. If you're already in, you're going to do the Green to Gold program, and you just need to see your Ed Center to see when the next schedule meeting is to get information on that. So how did you pick HR? Because from my understanding, when you go to ROTC, it's not something that you selected. You have to compete with everybody in the country, depending on how well you did in school, did you do any community service, and some other things. So was it something that you wanted, or was other things in your top 10 list?
Okay, so my program that I was in was a very small, like I said earlier, it was an extension of A&M. We had 19 cadets in our class, which was drastically a 180 from where I was at LSU. LSU, we had, I think, 500 cadets. So I had the experience of a huge school where you've got all of these kids going. They're all mostly freshly out of high school, so it's not a lot of experience. It's a lot of book knowledge. The instructors have been retired for a little while. You might have some that are on the verge of retiring. They don't have a lot of operational, most recent deployment experience. To where then I came to Texas and we had 19 cadets, like I mentioned. Every one of the cadets, minus myself, was prior service. So we had sergeants, staff sergeants, and even some sergeants first classes that were in my program. So the bonus to that is they took me under their wing. They squared me away. They taught me everything, not just the book knowledge, but they taught me everything that they had been through. A lot of these guys and girls had already been to deployments. And so they were giving me real life experiences in addition to the book knowledge. So then comes the order of merit list, like you were talking about. You give your wish list, your top 10 of what you want to do. AG, Adjutant General, was in my top 2 or 3. I can't remember. I think it was my number 2. My number 1 was Medical Service Corps because, again, going back to that background, I wanted to be a pre-med doctor at some point. So because I was so young and I had come straight out of high school, I could not compete against all of these previous non-commissioned officers. They had so much more experience over me. So I had volunteering. I was on the Ranger team. I was on the Color Guard. I was on, all the extracurricular activities ROTC had. And then I also had a near 4.0 GPA and had a 300 on my APFT, on my physical fitness test, but I couldn't compete without that experience. Mm-hmm. So needless to say, on the order of merit list, I was at the bottom, which was absolutely miserable because I ended up getting one of my last choices. Because we were a female at the time, we didn't have a lot of options for combat arms, but you're required to put at least 1 combat arms in your top 10. So I didn't know a lot about the branches, and my options were air defense artillery or field artillery. As much as I knew about them, I compared, do I want to be in the air or the field? Well, I don't want to be in the field. So I picked air defense artillery, and it was literally number 10 on my top 10. Mm-hmm. And branch day came. My professor of military science called me and said, so you're going to be shooting missiles at Saddam Hussein. And I started laughing at him. And I said, sir, when you're ready to be serious, call me back. And I hung up. So he calls me back and he's like, no, you're really going to be ADA, air defense artillery. I cried my eyes out. I did not want that branch. With zero interest in it. And the worst part is my husband was armor, and armor and air defense artillery are both combat arms that do not play well together in terms of assignments. So as far as locations go, it's extremely limited on where you could go. So being dual military is already challenging. Being dual military with a child, challenging even more. Mm-hmm. Being dual military with a child with 2 branches that don't go well together because there's so limited locations, it was extremely hard. So we were geographically separated for a while, and that ultimately led me to change over to human resources. It was about 3.5, 4 years later before I was able to transfer over. But I wanted human resources. I just couldn't get it. Not until later.
How was the transition? What did you have to do other than put an application for you to transfer over branches?
Okay, so first of all, you have to reach out to the branch they want. They have to assess your file and say, yep, we want you. We want to accept you. That's the easier part. The harder part is your current branch that owns you releasing you. So your command, of course, has to support that initial request to do that branch transfer. At the time, I submitted, I think it took 3 submissions before I finally was able to get approved. Air Defense Artillery did not want to let me go because it was so limited with the officers at the time, especially female officers in that branch. They denied my first 2. They didn't question it. AG, Adjutant General, was immediately like, yeah, we want you, because I actually was in a Battalion S1 job doing HR as an Air Defense Artillery Lieutenant. Yeah, and that was another thing is my battalion commander at the time, I was an ADA lieutenant, and I was in a very odd position. I was in a branch immaterial job, and I was a company executive officer, company XO for a basic training infantry battalion. Completely random, and it's all because of the dual military thing. I had very unique assignments because the Army was trying to support us and give us assignments where we could go together. So
sorry to cut you off. You were together as a married couples program within the Army, right?
Correct. So a lot of people think the Married Armies Couple Program means you're going to absolutely be together. That's not true. The goal is to assign you together. It doesn't happen all the time whatsoever. And other people think that another misconception with MACP, Married Armies Couple Program, is that they won't deploy you at the same time if you have kids. Again, completely false. We've deployed twice, same location or same time frame, different locations when we had a child or when we had multiple children, actually. So support system comes in handy right there, because otherwise it's just, you can't do it. Either one of you have to pick and choose and get out, which ultimately, I'll talk about that later, but that's where my husband ended up retiring instead of continuing his career.
He 20 years, so that's still
true. But he had a lot. Yeah, he had a lot left in him. I think he could have gotten command sergeant major easily.
Well, he retired as a master sergeant, so I mean, it was right there.
Yeah,
and he's still young looking. I mean, Army puts a toll on you, and he still looks fit as a fiddle.
Yep.
I think I cut you off on one of my questions.
Oh, yes. Okay. So back to how I got picked up as the AG officer. My battalion commander had fired 3 of his battalion S1s prior to me. And then he looked across the battalion, and I think he really wanted somebody that I honestly, and this is just me being completely honest, I think he wanted a female. And I was one of very, very few females in the battalion. I think a lot of older male commanders think that a female makes a better S1, but I've seen some pretty dang good male S1s. But he picked me and said, "Hey, Lieutenant Hines, you're going to be my battalion S1." And I said, "I don't know anything about adjutant general, sir. I've never done HR." He goes, "Well, you're OCD, you're organized, you're super hard worker, and you'll do great." And I was like, okay. So then he put me in there. I had an amazing S1 team. I realized I was really OCD and organized, and it did work to my advantage. So did a really good job and decided, hey, you know what? I could do this. I want to do this for the rest of my career. And that's when I ended up doing the branch transfer.
Okay, so freeze right there. I have 2 questions. First question is, did you have your master's degree done at that time, or were you just working on your bachelor's?
I just had my bachelor's at that time.
Okay. So second question is, can you talk about what kind of duties were you in charge of as the HR?
It just depends on what job you have. So are you talking about when I actually did the branch transfer?
No, like, okay, yeah, let's talk about both. So what responsibilities were you as a lieutenant, not even being trained in that job, and then once you went to school, and then how different and more, what's the word I'm looking for? How much more the job entails.
Okay. During that time as a lieutenant at the battalion level, of course, you're going to have way different responsibilities in an operational unit, like in 10th Mountain or 101st. Me being in a basic training unit, my roles were a little bit different. I mean, you still have your standard taking care of soldiers in terms of human resources and personnel support. So accountability, their pay and their leave, their evaluations. But with the basic training aspect of it, I had a lot of the part of coordinating and planning all of the graduations. That was a big thing because, of course, we're doing cycles back to back to back to back. So you're bringing in all these families from all over the country into Fort Knox. That's where we were at the time. I was in 246 Infantry. They're not there anymore. But anyhow, that right there was eye-opening to me because, again, I never experienced that enlisted side. I never experienced drill sergeants. And I married a drill sergeant. My husband was a drill sergeant at that time. So I was a battalion S1 for a basic training unit, and he was right down the road in another unit as a drill sergeant. Mm-hmm. So I had drill sergeants at work all day, and then I came home married to a drill sergeant. I couldn't get away from drill sergeants. And it confirmed in my mind I was meant to be an officer. I could never have been a private.
You don't like
I don't like people in my face. I don't like people yelling at me, and I like to be in charge by people telling me what to do. But I tell you what, I have massive respect for enlisted soldiers because having been married to my husband since he was a specialist and going up the ranks with him and then seeing what these enlisted soldiers dealt with the basic training aspect, I give it to them. Hats off, because I don't have it in me. My mouth would get me in trouble.
It's a lot of work, and some people can't be behind the desk. I'd rather be in the field, even if it's filling a sandbag or pulling guard watch. I'd rather do that than create reports and making sure my punctuation is correct. So my hat's off to you, ma'am. I can't do it.
Hey, I am completely happy with my office. But back to your other question of what other things can you do as HR?
Mm-hmm.
So again, not having a lot of experience and understanding what adjutant general was, it's not just paper pushing. I thought it was, and that's a common misconception. Some of the things I have done as HR, I've literally just had to, shake my head and like, is this real? During my second deployment to Iraq, I was over casualty operations initially for the first half of the rotation. And then the second half, I was over plans and operations. So I oversaw morale, welfare, recreation, MWR, where I supported all of our soldiers camp, but I supported all of our soldiers across Iraq. And I apologize, my dogs just jumped in here, so hopefully they're quiet. But some of the coolest things I ever experienced in Iraq are bringing care packages. So, of course, I was with the 1st Cav Division headquarters, where we have all these goodies and Girl Scouts and people mailing out these care packages, and we didn't need them. We weren't at these tiny little locations. We were at a more established area in Iraq. And we would take all of these packages, all these care packages and goodies, and we would bring them to our soldiers, to include my husband at the time, who was at this tiny little location where they had nothing. I mean, they literally were eating MREs out of boxes, the milk ready to eat. All that was all they had. They didn't have hot meals. And so sorry, my dog is.
It's okay. You can bring the dog in. You gotta introduce your dog.
We did the care packages. We brought gym equipment because, again, all these soldiers said, like you had said earlier, you have work, you have gym, PT time, and then that's about it. Sleeping, that's about it. So we would get all this gym equipment, and it was makeshift, and we're not talking Planet Fitness type level, but we were bringing what we could, and we'd load up these big trucks and across Iraq, or helicopters and across Iraq, and we would deliver this stuff to these tiny locations. And when you talk about taking care of soldiers, it's not just paperwork. I mean, we literally were bringing them some type of sanity, some type of normalcy, where they could work out and have a little bit of a mental escape instead of just working 12-hour days. And the other thing, I was in charge of entertainment. So when we had all these celebrities that like to come to Iraq and visit the soldiers, support the troops, I escorted the WWE tour and John Cena, the Bella twins.
Oh, yeah.
It was super awesome. They're all wonderful people. Vince McMahon is amazing. And then I also had Angelina Jolie. She was in Iraq to do humanitarian missions and was going from refugee camp to refugee camp. And she decided, hey, I have an hour free time. I want to see soldiers. So they called me. Yeah, they called me. I was the captain at the time. Hey, Captain Hines, we have they couldn't say her name. They said AJ. We have AJ coming. And I'm like, what? Who the heck is AJ?
We have a VIP coming in.
And yeah, sure enough, she flies in a helicopter, and I go pick her up in a black SUV and escort her to go surprise soldiers. And that
is so cool.
Yeah. And she's super, super sweet. But that's what I'm saying, is you don't know what you're going to be doing. You may be supporting soldiers behind a desk. You may be in a helicopter escorting freaking Angelina Jolie across Iraq. Yeah. There's so many different things that HR, it's basically anywhere there's a soldier, that soldier needs support, and that support ranges everything from their pay to their food to their entertainment to their equipment, whatever. So yeah, I wouldn't change it for the world. That's and I wish we would have had it from day one.
You guys are vital, because for us to grow in our careers or our MOS, we have to make sure that our packets are done correctly. And going through the rank, you learn a lot, but you don't know everything. So you are like the source, other than other sources on the webs. But if we can't find that source, you're the ones that we come to be like, help, can you fix our SRB? Or it's a paperwork that has like all of our awards, every places that we've done, your shooting qualifications, your PT qualifications. It's just a snapshot of your job on a piece of paper. So when that gets messed up, or if your packet for school needs to get done, you guys are the first ones on the ground to help us through those, so we get where we need to go to get our experience.
Yep.
So it's a huge, and you do this for every soldier. So like I said earlier today, you have 36,000 people that you oversee. At a battalion, it could be what, roughly 1,500?
Yeah. Probably less than that.
Okay. Yeah. 500, 600 people in the battalion. And then a brigade, the last brigade that we left was 4,500. So you're looking at each individual. Yes, there's echelons there to help you out, but your primary is every single soldier. So it's a big job.
Correct.
And your team is very small to handle all that. So it's incredible.
Yeah.
So we went to, so where we left off was not going to school for your job. So how did you transfer over? You put your packet in, finally gets picked up. Where'd you go to learn HR?
Okay, so as soon as my third submission was approved, finally, I went to my very first Adjutant General professional training. And that was at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina. And it was, I think it was about 6 months at that time. We didn't have the different courses that they have now. I think they do it in 2 parts now. And at that time, it was just straight up one shot. Ironically, I learned more on the job doing what I did as a battalion S1 at the basic training unit than I did really at the school, because I had hands-on. I had OJT learning. And then I got to the school and I'm like, that's not what really happens, because they're telling me, well, when you're a battalion S1, you're going to do X, Y, Z. And I'm like, no, I just finished doing battalion S1. That's not how it works. Let me explain to you. And then I ended up teaching some of my teachers. But again, that's my personality. So it is what it is.
It's broke. And you got to tell them how to fix it, because if not, you're teaching the wrong thing and you're just going and fixing the problem.
So fast forward several years later, my previous Division G1, Colonel Usry, Jack Usry, super awesome guy. He ended up being the Adjutant General Commandant and reached out to me. This is several years later, and was like, hey, Major Hines, can I use your casualty training for the AG schoolhouse? And I was like, absolutely, sir. He's like, I got you a coin later. I was like, okay. So ultimately, me being a loudmouth captain at the time, a junior captain, and trying to teach my teachers, my training ended up being the standard that was taught at the Adjutant General School several years later. So,
hell yeah, that's what. Excuse me, that's what I'm talking about. What's that? I'm surprised they haven't pulled you back to the schoolhouse to teach. The upcoming. Soldiers come in. Now, question: at the schoolhouse, do they mix officer and enlisted through the training course, or is that segregated?
Completely different. So you've got just your captains. We may have had a couple of lieutenants, but they were senior lieutenants that were promotable. So,
okay. Is the length of schooling time same from officer to enlisted?
No, I think the officers is a little bit longer. I think the captain's career course is actually, I'm pretty certain it's longer than what you would have for your AG basic training.
Okay. Now I'm going to throw you a curveball because I'm curious about this question. And it's a question earlier on this week. How different is the job of a soldier doing 42 Alpha versus what you're doing as an officer?
Okay. So I'm probably not going to give you the politically correct answer, because I'm not your politically correct officer. I'm more of a taboo officer in terms of, I don't like the terms, this is NCO business, this is officer business. Mm-hmm. I think at the end of the day, it's soldier business, it's leader business. There shouldn't be a differentiation. Yes, there's a chain of command, and I believe soldiers should go to their immediate chain of command, i.e. their sergeant, then on up the chain. But I have always prided myself on, I don't care if I'm a private, I don't care if I'm a captain, I don't care if I'm a lieutenant colonel, I should know the same skill set. I should be able to pick up the computer or the pen or whatever and know how to do exactly what my privates do. Mm-hmm. Because I've had a PVT private straight out of advanced individual training, AIT, that could do more than someone that's been in the Army for 10 years just because they had that skill set. And there shouldn't be a difference there. It shouldn't be a one-stop shop of only this person knows how to do this and this person knows how to do this. So I think as an AG officer, you need to have that skill set to do everything that your soldiers do. So I see the big difference is just, in my mind, it's power and decision making. And then, of course, the responsibility. So my soldiers, what they're doing, ultimately, it's my name. It's me on the responsibility line. Mm-hmm. So that's why you may call me micromanaging, but I wanted to see everything that came out of my shop, because at the end of the day, it was my name that was signed off on.
Yeah, so, and if somebody's gone for sick or something or step out of the office, that next soldier knows that other soldier's job, because I've seen it where it's very you will only do awards, you will only do NCORs, you will only do ORBs, you know. So I've seen it
and
where
doing that, you're not professionally developing those soldiers. You're not preparing them to do other things that's going to help advance them into another location. Because again, with AG, you don't know where you're going to find yourself. I have Lieutenant Morgan Heaps. You remember her?
Yeah.
She just left 3rd Brigade, 10th Mountain, and she was in my S1 shop. She was my strength manager, but there were so many times where she had to do multiple things that weren't in her job scope. And same thing with Specialist Foster. I think, actually, excuse me, Sergeant Foster. She just recently pinned on. Sergeant Foster.
If you're watching this.
That's right. She did things that me as a major that I would be doing. And that's the thing, is if you have a good team and you cross train and you teach your soldiers from start to finish of how to take care of another soldier, you don't have to worry about, oh, well, we can't do that for you right now. Sorry, Private so-and-so. I know you took your lunch break. The only time you have this whole week to come get help, but we can't help you because that person's not here.
Very frustrating when that happens.
Yes. Our job is to find a way to say yes and take care of that soldier.
Yeah. So that's a great segue. I think that's a very smart way to do it. Again, I've only seen S1 in very small atmospheres through my military career. I think at 3rd Brigade, 10th Mountain, where I saw your teamwork night and day with processing, very expedient, gets done. If it gets kicked back for whatever reason, paperwork or a packet, there's notes saying why it's just not disposed. Be like, well, you didn't meet the requirements and you're gonna have to resubmit again. Okay, what's wrong?
Right.
So I think your setup is very good, and hopefully the new team that's down there is continuing with the legacy that's left behind.
I think they are. There's still some good ones left there. Mendez, soon to pin on Sergeant Mendez. And he actually just got recently married. I don't know his new last name, but he's still there. And then I think Sergeant Foster, she might still be there. She may have PCS. I know she was getting ready to move to Korea. But yeah, they've got some good people still there. And like I told my team, and this is again kind of a rule of thumb I live by, if I set them up for success and I leave, I've done my job. If things run wonderfully while I'm there and then I walk out and everything falls to crap, I've done nothing, because it's not about me. It's about that unit and that enduring mission. And again, as AG, it's processes, it's systems. How can we work smarter, not harder? How can we make the mission easier on the soldiers for enduring timeline?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Again, because you can't be the, what is it called? The pinwheel? No, it's not the pinwheel. It's man, my words are escaping me. This is a horrible interview. Like if you step out for whatever reason and you got picked up to go somewhere and your shot cannot continue without you, then I think you've done a disservice to that program, because everything relied on your shoulders. So if, like you just said, if you trained everybody to cover their right and left limits, you left to success.
Right.
So real quick, I want to remind our viewers to leave your comments below if you have a question. We're starting to get towards the end of our interview. I do, Major Hines, have some questions earlier on the week I want to ask you real quick, since we're at this stage of our conversation.
Okay.
What kind of special training is given to your MOS?
It really depends on, other than your basic skills, it really depends on what area you're going to be working in. So you may be specialty in postal, and so you're going to go through an in-depth course on postal operations, casualty operations. That's an area that I am extremely passionate about. I've processed casualties at Fort Hood and Garrison. I've processed casualties in Iraq. And then I was actually recruited to work casualty mortuary affairs at HRC, at Human Resources Command. So I actually was over all of the casualties for the entire Army. So once the families transition, they would transition from the funeral and the original situation and in the initial stages of everything, they would come over to my section, and we had all of their family to support them until everything was paid out. All their entitlements were received, and they were just in survival mode at that point from everything complete. So that right there, not everybody's meant to do it. I am super passionate about it. My husband has been injured a couple of times. He has 2 Purple Hearts, and being the spouse and receiving that phone call that something had happened, there's no PowerPoint presentation or memorandum that takes the place of assisting a soldier's family, especially when their soldier's gone. So that's a huge HR area that a lot of people don't realize that is a specialty. You may also have an HR platoon training. They are HR companies, excuse me, not platoon, to where they'll basically branch out and they'll go on a deployment and they'll support. So it's kind of like in my current command, Army Futures Command, we have cross-functional teams. So they're very small teams, but they support a specific mission and they're standalone. They go from one location to another and stand alone. There's a myriad of different topics that HR can go get personal training in or specialty training. I actually, even as HR, went to a 4 or 5 week course and became a master fitness trainer. So my entire job for over a month was just to go to the gym, which was crazy. I was like, I'm getting paid to work out. This is crazy. So yeah, it's a variety, and it's definitely, I think, probably the most most versatile branch, because there's so many different things that you can do. If there's a soldier there, you can go there. So as far as locations go, you can pretty much go anywhere there are soldiers. Okay, wonderful. And then here's some other questions we have is, what is the difference in the way that you do your job when you're deployed in the field or in garrison level? So let me clarify that for our viewers. So we call our garrison like our main post, where we do a lot of our transients from our living quarters on base, where gas station, commissary, like a grocery store. It's like the living area of the base. And then when we say the field environment, that's the wooded area or the training sites or the mounted sites that we have specifically trained, so it doesn't interfere with all the day-to-day activities, the housing, the I wouldn't say officers, all the businesses. And then when I say deployed, that's a deployment. That doesn't have to be a combat deployment. It could be deployed to Africa, Italy, Poland. It could be any one of those areas. So when I say deployed, don't automatically assume it's down in a combat zone. So sorry, I will repeat the question. What is the difference in the ways that you do your job when you're deployed in the field or in a garrison environment? I think probably there with AG, I don't think there's a huge difference, aside from you're going to be processing casualties, most likely, unfortunately, in a deployed environment. Whereas on a garrison, on an installation level, you have a casualty assistance center that handles that, and your role is a lot. You still have a role, but it's a lot smaller. But I mean, you're still supporting soldiers. So the biggest change is you're going to have harder time taking care of them with less assets available. So you may have to figure out how to go old school with pen and paper instead of having systems in digital and technology, depending on where you're at. So that's really the only big change, because at the end of the day, it's just about taking care of soldiers. Okay. A couple more questions, and then we'll get back to your story, your Army story. So I had a person that commented on earlier this week. What advice would you give somebody looking into this job? And then, do I need a background in this field to apply for this MOS? Good question. Okay, so what do you need to do the job? You need to care about people. At the end of the day, you don't have to have experience, because you're going to get trained. It's helpful if you're super organized. It's helpful if you're computer smart, but the Army's going to train you. Whatever they give you as far as a job, they're going to train you. You're going to get that basic knowledge. And then what you decide to do with that basic knowledge is going to determine whether you excel or not. The biggest thing is understanding that it's not just a job, that it's a privilege to take care of soldiers and to take care of their families. And if you have that mentality, it's going to make a difference, especially in terms of how successful you are in AG. My Army mom, my Army ma'am, my mentor, she just penned on this past Friday, Brigadier General Hope Rampy.
Congratulations.
So congrats. She's going to be our next Adjutant General for the Army. She actually just PCS to Fort Knox this week. So congrats to my ma'am. But something she told me, yeah, she's amazing. But something she told me one time back in 2008, she said, treat every single action as if it's your own. And that's going to make a difference in the way that you do what you do. And it's absolutely true. If anything, for me, it's hard to find a stopping point in that day. Like you said, at any given day, I was in the office until all hours of the night, just because I know that those soldiers are relying on us as AG officers and in S1 sections to take care of what they need. So their pay may be jacked up and it's not going to get fixed unless we do the paperwork. They may be putting in a leave packet to go on an emergency leave to take care of their family or to see a loved one that's about to die, something that serious, and it's literally sitting in our inbox. And if we don't process it, that soldier's family is going to suffer. So it's definitely beyond paperwork.
I want to cut you off again and say this one thing. So no, and I apologize, but I have to tell people this. Through my 2 years at being at Fort Polk, just walk, because I wander the halls, upstairs, downstairs. I go into people's other cubicles because I'm not necessarily ear hustling, but I'm just, checking out, see what everybody's doing because I like to learn. It didn't matter what the person's rank was when I see them walking in S1 Lost. Your door is usually the first door before they come into the S1 Center. And if they poke their head in and they ask you a question, you stop everything and you help that individual out. It doesn't matter if it's a PV2, brand new, lost in the brigade headquarters. You'll direct them. You call one of your soldiers. You stop everything. You don't kick them out and say, look, I'm a major. You don't talk to me. You go talk to them. And I just find that refreshing that there's still people out there that care. And it's just with your hours that you put in, I think that's one of the reasons why you work so late, because you do stop and you do help everybody that crosses your path. So thank you so much for being an inspiration in allowing people to see that there's officers out there that are just not leadership driven. Oh, go talk to your NCO. They can ask you questions because you do have a lot of experience.
At the end of the day, especially with our current uniforms, we wear the Velcro rank. At the end of the day, everybody's going to take that Velcro rank off and they're still a person. And that's our job. And of course, I've had the other side. I've been the Army spouse of a lower enlisted. I've been the one labeled as the Army wife. Oh, you're the one going to be an officer. So I've had so many different hats. I was an Army brat. Now I am an Army mom of a private, a PVT private. So I'm extremely unbiased in terms of, I'm an officer. I'm sorry, but I work for a 4-star general right now. And I'm going to talk to him the same exact way I'm going to talk to a brand new private. It's about people at the end of the day.
Your actions speak so much more volumes than just holding the rank on your chest. Obviously, you have that rank on your chest for a reason, but how you use that and how you interact with people is going to show who you are.
There's still some good leaders out there that have that mentality.
I'm finding them. I am. I'm going people's business and saying, hey, what have you done?
That's right.
I want to touch on, you brought something up, mentors. Can you talk about mentors in the Army real quick? I'm kind of putting you on the spot on this one. The reason why I say that is because you can have a mentor in your life. You should have one in the Army. This person is there to guide you, direct you, to ask questions, not be afraid to ask the dumb questions. Be like, hey, and these people should be very honest with you. And if you don't have a mentor in life or in your service, if you are watching this in the active duty, you need to go find one. They don't have to be somebody that you work in every day. It doesn't have to be your team leader, your squad leader, your platoon sergeant. Find somebody and help those people grow. So
yeah, I was very fortunate to meet my mentor very long ago. It's been 12, almost 13 years ago. And I was a very junior captain straight out of captain's career course. And she took me under her wing and had that blunt honesty. And she had the characteristics that I wanted to have as a leader. And I felt that connection. And I think that's the biggest thing with a mentor. Yes, you can have that professional relationship. But for me, a true mentor is someone that you can come with, whether it's professional or personal, and give them, hey, ma'am, hey, sir, can you give me honest guidance? Like you said, you need to be able to hear the good, the bad, the ugly. where you can get that honest assessment of, hey, this is what I just did. What are your recommendations? Or here's my evaluation. What do you think? Is this good? Do you think I'm good to sign it, or should I make some changes? Or my next assignment options are XYZ. What do you think? So it's somebody that you truly value their opinion, and then look at their career. Is it a career you want to mimic? Is it a career you want to follow? And, are they the type of leader you want to be? If you can find that person, latch on to them and keep in touch with them, and definitely lean on them. I was going to say Major Rampy. Goodness, I met her when she was Major. Brigadier General Rampy. She was my sanity in my second deployment. There were many a days where she was, hey, morale check, let's go back behind the building and talk, because she was my sounding board to just get through that deployment. And when you're processing casualties and dealing with the emotional stresses that I had, yeah, if you can find that person, you're very, very blessed. And there's some good ones out there. You just have to look. But let me sidetrack. I would also say this, and I've told my sister this when she was in the Army. I've told my junior soldiers that I've had underneath me, whether they're a crappy leader or not, take something from them, even if it's what not to do. I literally had this conversation with my son, I think last week, who is a private. Said, even if it's a bad experience, even if your leader is just a piece of crap, learn something and do a mental note of, when I am in charge, I will not do this. Exactly. So, and then grow through those ranks so you can make the change. That's why I tell really strong enlisted soldiers, do you want to make change? As a non-commissioned officer, can you make change? Yes. But as an officer, can you change policies? Can you implement those changes? More so, yes. So I encourage those younger enlisted officer or enlisted soldiers to go OCS, to go green to gold, so they can have more of that decision-making power.
Mm-hmm. Yep, because we can only do so much. We're there to train, mentor, and lead soldiers. We're not there really to change policies. There's areas in the Army where we could put our knowledge and our experts into, say, hey, this will be a great change, but we are not the founding fathers to change it. It's people in positions like you are.
Right. So. Well, ultimately, it's going to be the commanders. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
All right, so let's get back on track real quick. We talked about what made you change over. We talked a little bit about your schooling, how you schooled them, should I say. And then can you tell us a little bit about your duty stations, how different each one was, and then what you liked about them, what you didn't like about it? Because again, we have to talk about some negative stigmas, because not everything we do in the Army is roses. So I really want to show people that it's not as great as we all say it could be.
Sorry. No, absolutely. You're going to have challenges, whether you're military or in the civilian world. You're going to have challenges, and it's going to be what you make of it, honestly, in my opinion. Fort Polk, actually, recently, they're talking about giving a hardship allowance incentive to have people come to Fort Polk.
No way.
Yes. And again, this is my home state. I grew up about an hour north of Fort Polk, and my brother was actually born at Fort Polk. There's not a lot there. I mean, there's not a mall. There's not a ton of restaurants, chains, that kind of stuff. But it's what you make of it, and it's the people, and it's how you get involved. So yes, each duty station is going to have more to offer than others. Some are going to be different. Some are going to be better. Some are going to be worse. But I think you can make it an experience based on what you put into it. So for instance, Fort Polk, unfortunately for me, my days were so long, I didn't get as involved as I wanted to. But I know people that are there that love it. And again, it's all based on what you do. So you could look at Fort Polk as it's in the middle of nowhere. You could look at Fort Leonard Wood. Oh, it's Fort Lost in the Woods. It's in Missouri. There's nothing there. It's what you make of it. So one assignment I had a negative experience, Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. And it had nothing to do with the duty station. We were there. I was there for Command and General Staff College for CGSC, and the hours were not bad whatsoever. Mm-hmm. We got off relatively early. There was a lot to do there. You have Kansas City right there. And I absolutely hated it because I was geographically separated. My husband was in Fort Knox. 2 of my 3 kids were in Fort Knox. I had 1 child with me. And so my family being separated, that's part of it. In the Army, you have to sacrifice being away from people that you want to be with. You have to miss birthdays. You have to miss anniversaries. Mm-hmm. You have to deploy. Leaving my kids when I came to Fort Hood. I knew when I came to Fort Hood, first cab at the time, we were on every other year rotating in Iraq. And I knew when I came to Fort Hood, I was going to deploy. And I didn't even get my household goods, my personal property out of storage from one location to another. It stayed in storage, and I got on a plane and went to Iraq. It sucked. And I did not want to leave my kids. My mom, God bless her, has raised our kids a couple of times because we were both deployed at the same time. So those are things, yeah, it's not all glamorous. It's not all great, but I think by far the good outweighs the bad. For instance, right now, yes, I'm in civilian clothes and I'm very blessed, and I'm in my house. I'm not in an office. With the COVID situation, I've been very fortunate to be able to telework. And while some people are civilianized and they're losing their jobs, I'm, working out when I can throughout the day, and I'm sometimes in my PJs all day, and I'm on the computer and I'm knocking work out. And that's a benefit that other people can't say they have. And the Army supports it. And then something else, I'm Army Futures Command. I'm literally with Fortune 500 companies in downtown Austin. The Party Street, 6th Street, equivalent to Bourbon Street, New Orleans. I'm on 7th Street. That's where I work.
Oh, wow.
And I wear civilian clothes. We go by first names. It's very civilianized. We're the Army Futures Command headquarters. So we're geographically separated all over the world, global. We have people OCONUS overseas outside of the continental U.S. That's what OCONUS means. Using my acronyms.
There you go.
But just being in this type of environment, I have to remind myself sometimes that I'm still in the Army and I'm getting paid, and is the same amount as a major that's working 18-hour days in Fort Polk. So you don't know where you're going to find yourself at. So like you said, yes, it's not all great all the time, but there's so many benefits that we have. You can't compare it. You absolutely can't.
You have to experience, and you make the duty station. Like
absolutely.
My goal is I make a bucket list wherever I go. I see what is in that state or location that looks appealing, and I just make a list, and I should complete that list or get close to that list during my time there. Yep. If you are an individual that stays on post and says, woe is me, you need to look at a hard look at yourself, because it's your fault. Really, it's your fault.
We have so many opportunities in the Army, and I think every installation makes an effort to give you some opportunities, whether it be traveling to different locations or putting together little shopping trips or whatever. You just have to seek them out and get involved in your community.
And I have to say real quick, I was one of those naysayers when I said, oh man, I got Fort Polk. That's in the middle of nowhere. Oh man. But you know what? I have a great group of friends down there. Yep. And we got into trouble. We went I got lost coming in from New Orleans, trying to come in through the back way, and I was on training sites. I'm like, my GPS is screwed up. Get me out of here. So I had a blast. Do I want to go back there? No, I want to see something new. But I have nothing negative to say about Fort Polk, So it is what you make it of it.
Exactly.
So, got a question. This is from a question from earlier on the week when we were advertising your job. So this viewer was named Ashley Nelson. Her question was, what draws you to this MOS?
People. It's all about people. I'm, like I said, I've been around every aspect of the Army, and I've seen so many bad situations where soldiers are just treated like crap. And I'm not a commander yet. I may have that opportunity as a lieutenant colonel. But if there's any part of the day I can make better for the soldier, whether it's just smiling at them. And let me go back, really funny story. When I was in the basic training unit, we were on the range, in the weapons range. And, these privates are super hot and tired, and they've got all this gear, and they're just so frustrated because they can't shoot right. And they'd come off, and they're all, mentally just exasperated. And I'm like, it's okay, private, shake it off. You'll do it the next time. Come on. And the drill sergeants were like, why don't you just hug them next time, ma'am? and I think it needs to be a balance. I'm just one of those leaders where I don't think you have to scream and yell and curse to get your point across. Does it come in handy if you have to do that? Yeah, especially if you don't do it often, because then when you do it, people are going to pay attention. Whoa. But I think it needs to be a balance too, to take care of those soldiers, especially these young kids. I mean, my son's 18 years old. and he's at first cap as a brand new private. So yeah. And then you also have some soldiers that came in later in life and they're like, holy crap, what did I do? What did I get myself into? And I just think you need to have those caring leaders that are there to make things easier. Like you said, just any time of the day, it doesn't matter what rank they are. If they're there and they need something and you have that capacity to help them, help them.
Yep.
I mean, it's that simple. It's all about treating people the way you want to be treated. Do you want to walk into a business? Let's talk about Walmart. You want to walk into Walmart and find out something about a product that you need to return. Do you want to be told, sorry, I'm on break, or sorry, that's not my job? No, you want to get assistance. And that's what human resources is. It's taking care of people and treating people and making people's life easier, just like you would want yours. And the other thing, it transitions. Civilian life, it transitions. I have several friends that were in the Army as a human resource officer and got out as a captain. And they were literally headhunted by huge companies, Pepsi, Target, Coca-Cola, because they have that leadership skills, number one, that the Army gives you, especially as an officer, and they have the human resources. So these huge Fortune 500 companies are seeking out these AG, adjutant general officers. And that's just skills that you can't compare in the civilian world. And you have a lot of other branches in the military where they get out and they can't find a job because they were combat arms, and there's not, unless you go police officer or some type of, whatever, you're not going to find a job. HR, you're going to get sought out.
So many college kids are coming out with huge amount of debt and they can't go anywhere because they don't have the job experience. The Army is going to pay you to get your degree. Force you to get a degree. It doesn't matter if you're officer or enlisted, pretty much. If you want to promote, you're going to have that job experience. You're going to get certificates or other things that pertain to your job. And then when you get out, you have benefits. You have by the way, do you own your house, ma'am?
I do. I've owned my houses since 2008.
And you use the VA loan to help you out with that?
Every time. We are on, I think this is our 5th home that we've purchased, and we've put 0 down every time. And we were able to, thankfully, by the grace of God, we were able to sell each time we moved, because we do move every 2 years. But again, that's a benefit between my husband, and that is one of the benefits of dual military. Both of us had the VA loan option. So we would just literally rotate. Okay, this house is going on your VA loan. All right, we'll sell that one. Next one's on my VA loan. So there's just so many benefits. You can't compare it. You really can't.
So, yeah. So, I mean, it's a great stepping stone to get out and experience the world and have that safety net. Say, okay, well, if I don't know how to manage my money and I get in trouble, there's going to be an NCO or officer to kick you in the butt and put you in class to show you how to balance a book, to show you this is what an interest rate is, and this is how much you're going to pay for it, and this is a bad one. You need to get out of it, and this is how we can help you with it. So even if it's not something you want to do long term, this is still a great opportunity, a stepping block to get your head and your future on track.
And again, that's why I stayed in as long as I have, because I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I signed up for 4 years, and then I did the 4, and I was like, oh, I still don't know what I want to do. So I stayed in, did another 4, 8 years came and went, and then I was like, oh, I still don't know what I want to do. So at this point, I'm, nearing 17 years and nearing retirement, and I kind of still don't know what I want to do. So I may just stay in until I figure it out.
I'm in that boat. I got 5 years. I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. So, I mean, I'm very successful with what I have been doing. Why stop that?
I feel like as long as I can keep making positive changes for soldiers.
Don't be stagnant.
May as well stay in.
So you have 3 kids, and I heard one is a private in the service. Now, was this thrust upon him? Did you say you better join, or did you allow him to pick his career path? And why did you choose to go Army?
We were actually, I was actually not super pro, because I've seen how soldiers can be treated, and it's not always great. And so I was not the most excited. But he decided to kind of waft his way through high school, and GPA was not great. And his dad, being retired first sergeant, drill sergeant, gave him an option. Hey, you're 18, man, figure it out. So, and we're not, even though we are financially capable of helping with school and that type of thing, we're not gonna hand him anything. We worked our butt off for everything we have, and we told him there's options for you to go to school. Thankfully, with my husband's VA disability, he has a lot of free college options, but because of what he did in high school, he wasn't able to get into those colleges. So he basically had to figure it out, and he took it upon himself. He actually went to a recruiter without my knowledge, and I made his recruiter's day a little worse that day because he's like, "Hey, Mom, what's my social security number?" I was like, "Excuse me?" "Well, I'm at a recruiter's office." I was like, "Excuse me?" And so I told him to put the recruiter on the phone, and the recruiter and I had a conversation because he was 17 at the time. And we had to come to Jesus. And I told him, he's not giving you any socials, and we're going to have a conversation with parents before he signs anything. So the recruiter at the end of the day ended up being great. And we got along. I scared the bejesus out of him, but we got along at the end, and he did get him a good deal. He signed and enlisted as an infantryman and airborne. Yeah, so it wasn't his first choice, but I can tell you right now, he loves it. He absolutely loves it. He initially went in because he had to figure out what to do and leave the house. And now he's like, I want to be in for 20 years. Like at this point, he wants to be a drill sergeant. That's his newest goal, he's told us.
Awesome. Well, I mean, with parents like you, I mean, sky's the limit, you know?
We'll see, hopefully. He has potential.
Listen to his people, though. I heard, some things about him already. He needs to, if you're watching this, listen to your sergeants. Okay, don't be getting in trouble. Don't mess up the Hines name here in the military. You're going places. But by the way, I'm an Army recruiter. If you have a question,
see, I'm nice to you.
I'll make sure none of that no parent business happens on my watch. So, now we're ending our conversation that we have, but I do have some questions about your husband. He's a retired master sergeant. He did 20 years. You still being active duty. You still have about 4 years left or more, depending on where the Army takes you. What is he going to do now? Is he the stay-at-home dad, or is he looking for another business to open up or start?
Maybe somewhere down the line, but he missed so much because his career was already going when we got married. Like I said, I was in high school. He was already in the Army and pounding away and putting in the time. In fact, when I met him, when we started dating, he had already been to Korea and Bosnia. So since we've been married, he's been to Iraq 3 times, Afghanistan. He's had a lot of hard work that he's had to put out. So he missed pretty much everything with our first son. He missed a lot with our second son. Even with our third son, who just turned 9, he missed the first 3 years. So when 20 years came, our kids had so much instability and moving constantly that we just had to come with that decision, that family decision of, all right, you're retirement eligible. Do you stay in or do I stay in? Because both of us doesn't make sense. It was too much. Our oldest was in 10 schools before he finally graduated. And I think that had some bearing on why his GPA was where it was, because moving from state to state, education is different and teaching is different. It's a downfall of the dual military with kids. So we made that decision that he had his 20 years and he earned it. And I told him, you are completely stay home, get to know the kids, do some, get to know them and enjoy time at home. He worked his butt off for so long and he just missed out on everything. So now he's spending a lot of one-on-one time with our younger 2 boys and kind of mentoring our oldest son. And it's awesome because he's right down the road from us. So, and he actually reaches out, which is amazing because in high school he had 0 desire to talk to us, and now he actually calls us, which is great. And hopefully that continues.
Dad, hey, we have to get training.
Yeah,
I need to be the smart one now. Tell me how this happens or how this works.
My husband is going to go back to school eventually. He's with COVID and everything right now, it's kind of on hold, but I know he wants to go back and do some type of business degree. And we actually even 2 days ago, we're talking about maybe doing a Chick-fil-A franchise in the future. Can't go wrong with Chick-fil-A. So,
I like Texas Roadhouse. That's my goal. Open up a Texas Roadhouse chain.
okay. Texas Roadhouse rolls. Okay.
Yeah. But Chick-fil-A is great. I mean, you'll never, ever.
Yeah. Well, it's a really good Christian company. And I actually have another fellow officer. He wasn't AG. I don't remember what his branch was, but he got out and now he's a Chick-fil-A owner. And this guy, he's on my Facebook friend list. Rick Michaels, shout out. Super great person. And he does, I mean, he's constantly making posts of all these donations he's giving to organizations and doing good for his community. And he was another Army officer that got out.
And he took advantage of I think the small business loan or something like that to help out opening up.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he specifically did, but I know those options are there. And that was something I was talking to my husband about a couple days ago.
Hey, great investment, especially you guys are still young too. I mean, and that's something that you could help the kids of the grandkids out, further down.
Don't be putting grandkids on. Don't say that. That's many, many years down the road.
I mean, he's 18, right? At Hood.
That's not funny.
I mean, Grandma.
We're career focused.
Just saying. Okay. Hey, we have a live question. Give me a second. I'm going to read it to you. This is from Anonymous. I'm going to let you know who it is here in a second. Question is, maybe discuss the balance between taking the best possible care or your soldiers, treating each action as your own, and taking care of yourself / your family. I don't know why, or excuse me, I don't know what I would have done without your guidance from you, ma'am.
Was that part of the comment?
Yes. Oh. So this is the person that you worked with, and you gave this person guidance and pretty much the work balance between family and work and yourself and work.
I will say that balance is hard and you have to have a very good support system. And apologies again, my dog's trying to get in the camera. And you have to take care of yourself. It's as hard as it is. You have to find time to sleep. You have to find time to eat. I've had sleeping bags under my desks many a time where I've had to crawl under my desk and take a power nap. I've had to go sit in my car on my lunch and sleep then. You just have to figure out what works best for you. But the support system is vital. I mean, it is crucial. Those late hours that you talked about that you saw me in the office, it's because I had a husband who was retired at home, making dinner, doing homework, doing stuff around the house, taking care of the kids. I've talked about my mom, where we were both deployed and she was our support system. I've even had situations where my middle son, when he was a baby, had an immune issue and couldn't go to daycare. So I literally had my refried packet to get out of the Army to resign my commission because we couldn't do it. My husband was a drill sergeant. I couldn't bring my child to daycare. So what was I going to do? I had an amazing battalion commander, Roger Shuck, amazing guy, who told me, what can I do to keep you in the Army? And I was like, sir, unless you get me a nanny, which you can't, or let me bring my child to work with me, I can't stay in. I just can't. He can't be around other kids. He said, okay, we'll bring him to work. You have an office. Close your door, put a caution sign on the door, because he literally couldn't be around anybody with germs. Very COVID situation. Mm-hmm. So I don't even know how long, my son, literally little baby, would come to work with me every single day. We celebrated his first birthday in our battalion headquarters. He was the battalion baby. But it's leaders like that and support systems like that, whether it's in the military or your personal life, that help make that happen. So I think the balance is to have a good support system and figure out what works for you. But then just to have somebody, that mentor comes into handy, and then have people put you in check. Like, you have to take care of each other. Every day I'd walk through my office. Hey, what'd you eat? Did you eat yet? No? Where's your food? What are you eating? Why are you still here? Is it your birthday? Is your anniversary? Or where are your kids? We had kids in the office, unfortunately, more than we wanted to, but it's taking care of each other. The Army is not a job. It's your family. And I told my guys that all the time. I saw them 10 times more than I saw my actual family.
True. Very true. Yeah. I'm starting to bring the gym to the office because I'm literally at the office more than I am at home.
Absolutely.
I don't think that's a bad thing because I'm very passionate at what I do. So I stay where I feel I'm doing the most good.
Yep.
So,
yep. Honestly, let me segue really quick.
Yeah, go for
I
it.
think that's another selling point for the military is it's not just a job. It is a life. And I honestly don't know that I have very many people in my life right now, whether it's friends or family. Well, family, yes, but friends that I have not met through the military.
Yeah.
So that right there, you can go get a job at Walmart. You can go get a job at Target. You can go get some kind of office job, civilianized. I guarantee you the majority of those positions, you're going to clock out at the end of the day and you might run into somebody and be like, hey, Bob, that's about it. Whereas military, it is your family. It's not just camaraderie. You will have connections for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Call them up.
You'll
Like,
have
"Hey, I'm in your state. Can I come crash at your house with
Yes.
my 4 kids and husband? Sure, we have an
Amen.
extra room, or here's a air mattress. They'll stop
Exactly.
everything. Or here's a key. Let yourself in. Exactly.
Exactly.
I have family like that, Army family, and there's no way I would have that type of personality if I stayed in my valley. So
Yep.
without a doubt, that you are so correct. And that question, hopefully I said it right, came from Morgan Heats. Hopefully he's a captain now. I'm not sure.
No, not yet. She will be though soon.
Soon. Okay. So hopefully I didn't screw up your question, Lieutenant. But I see that, and I know you preach that to your team. All right. Last couple questions to end out our interview. Question earlier on during the week. Being in the service for so long, what keeps you coming into work each day? I'm going to assume it's your team and your environment, but if you want to.
Right now, one of my largest driving factors right now is my son, is because a lot of the changes that we're making, I'm at a 4-star level command, they trickle down and ultimately it's going to impact him. And knowing that I can help impact things that are going to impact my own child, it's pretty huge. And then just still enjoying my job. There's days that I just don't feel like working, but you know what? You suck it up and you drive on. But I would say the majority of the time, I love my job. I love taking care of soldiers.
Awesome. If you were not in the Army, where do you think you would be now with life?
Honestly, I would probably be in Louisiana with 9 kids.
No, you'd be traveling the world. You'd be the Army spouse.
Hey, I'm just being real.
Well, I mean, you got half the team there. Okay, so what's your puppy's name? He's jumped in.
I know he wants to be on camera. This is my dude.
Oh,
Yes.
He's a little one. I thought he was a big dog.
No,
Got on the bed.
he's my 4th boy.
Aw, furry baby. All right. So we touched on this briefly, and I know you're a workaholic, but this is not the case for everybody. But how much family time do you really have?
Depends on your job. So you're going to have peaks and valleys. You're going to have times where you're not
How much time do you have?
Yeah. I will say right now I have a ton of time because one, I'm teleworking, but even when we weren't on the COVID schedule, I made a point that I would see them before I leave, even if it was, butt crack of dawn and dark, and I would just hug them before I leave. And then I was typically home. The position I'm in now, I was typically home around dinner time. So it just depends on the job. Like a brigade combat team, S1, you're going to be putting in long hours. A deployment, you're obviously going to be away. But it's just finding time, whether it be in the morning or on your lunch break or, when you have a day off, just spending that entire day. So it's challenging by far. I'm not going to sugarcoat it by any means, especially if you're.
You don't have to sugarcoat. This is why we have these. Everybody's experience is different.
Yeah.
So I want to know.
Yeah. I will say with my kids, I've been very fortunate enough, other than deployments and my brigade combat team S1 time, I've had a lot of time with my kids, more so than my husband. I mean, with my husband, we've been together going on 22, 23 years, and more than half of our marriage, we've lived separately because of being dual military. And that's just part of it. That's just a sacrifice that you have to make. So I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
I tried kicking him out and he cried at the door.
It's okay. He's part of the interview.
Yeah.
So what's your name?
This is Duke.
Duke?
Yes.
Oh, Duke. Such a pretty puppy. Okay, so my last question for you, and then we'll transfer it to any shout outs and any recommendations. So being in your career for so long, obviously you're going to have 20 years or plus experience of your career field, and you're going to have your degrees paid for and finished while you're in. You might go through that doctorate's level. We don't know yet, but you have that opportunity. You're still young in your job. What are some of the jobs you could apply for when you're out of the service? Or is there anything that you're looking at right now, or any businesses reaching out to you and your family?
Unfortunately, I've been getting hit up by quite a few people, and I'm like, no, I'm not ready to get out of the Army right now. Thank you for the interest, but that's okay. My current command, we're primarily, our headquarters in Austin, it's 500 people, but 400 of those are civilians, are government civilians. And I could very easily, if I really wanted to stay here, I could probably make that transition and work for Army Futures Command. Not sure I want to do that, but we'll see. We'll see where life takes me. I think right now my ideal job post-military, especially setting myself up, would be to go back to Kentucky, work at Casualty Mortuary Affairs again as a civilian, just because out of every job I've ever had, that was the one that was just mind-blowing. I mean, there were many days where I'd cry my eyes out because it was just so emotional. But when you meet a family that you've helped, and I've had the privilege of meeting 2 families ever of casualties that are fallen soldiers, but I had personally helped them, and it was ugly crying, crocodile tears, just from happiness of being able to have that opportunity to help them. Mm-hmm. And when they're in that situation, I mean, if you can bring any happiness or any relief, you can't replace that. So that's an option. And then I don't know, potentially maybe even ROTC. If I could go to LSU, it'd be amazing. But my career's kind of already past that point because I'm pending lieutenant colonel. So at that point, but I don't know. Those are some of the areas: teaching, and then of course taking care of fallen soldiers. Those would be kind of the areas that I'd want to pursue if I stayed around the military environment. But I don't know. I may end up just following my husband's footsteps and staying home and figuring out how to relax, because I don't do that very well.
I think you're going to get bored. So
he says the same thing.
Yeah, you're one of those personalities that have to be on go, and you just cannot. You have to talk to people. So I see a lot of amazing things for your career. Your career is definitely not even over yet, even though you've been in for 16 years. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you make lieutenant colonel, I mean, you have another 10 years to go.
Not if. It's not if. When. There you go. When.
Sorry, when. Let me back up. Rewind. So you have a very bright future ahead of you, and this is one of the reasons why I really wanted to get your story out there for people to look at, because you are a success and you're still climbing. So for people to say, "Oh, I'm happy where I'm at," don't listen to those people. Continue to grow.
Absolutely.
So, any closing comments you want to put out there? Any shout outs?
I would just say that, like you mentioned earlier, if you decide to do the military route, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be in that lifer mentality. Like literally when you graduate high school, if you don't have that plan, or even your senior year in high school, you don't have that plan, I think it's a great stepping stone to figure out what you want to do. Let the Army pay for where you live and give you clothes and give you food while you go to school and figure out what you want to do. Learn a skill set, and it doesn't have to be something that you're going to do for the rest of your life. You're going to gain so many skills just in those couple of years, even if you do a 2, 3, 4-year enlistment. Heck yeah, take advantage of it. I don't know that I would do enlisted just because I don't have that, but like I said, it's an option.
It is option, and both sides of the house is great. It's just depending on what you personally want to do.
Yeah.
You don't.
I will tell you, I'm so proud of my son right now, because seeing where his drive was in high school, or lack thereof, and then seeing him now, he is just having the time of his life. And it's not like he's getting to do amazing stuff, which he will get to, mm-hmm. but just having opportunities to do the stuff he does do. He's just like, he's in hog heaven. And especially as an Army mom, Army wife, Army soldier, to see that in my own child, it's awesome. Mm-hmm. It's awesome.
Awesome. No, that's great. And hopefully the other kids will follow his path and serve their nation. No? No?
No.
Well, hopefully.
I think my middle son is definitely college bound. He's very into sports, and I think he's definitely going to try and pursue that. And then my youngest one, he's going to be some type of artist or YouTuber or something. I don't know. This kid, he's one of those. He's 9 years old and watches documentaries and takes things apart to see how they work. Like he's very
awesome.
inquisitive. He's not about cartoons and Play-Doh.
Hey, you know what? Hey, the world is their oyster, and they have their life set up because of the experience you and your family have done so far. So let them explore and be their own. So who do you think has a great story to tell that we could bring on to the show?
I'm going to call out my ma'am because her story is insane. She literally, especially if you meet her in person, she's about 4'11", tiny, tiny little woman. And you would think that she's super quiet, but she is just dynamite in a small package. And this is why she's been selected early for promotion, for captain, for major, for all the way up. And she literally just is now a general, which is amazing. And she's had some challenges. I mean, she's had to leave her family, and she's had so many deployments, and she was one of the first battalion commanders as a female. Yeah, I mean, she'd be amazing. I'll hit her up for you.
Awesome. No, I can't wait. It's extraordinary. Plus, showing the success that females can still do it. It's not a man's world anymore. Everybody is coming together. It doesn't matter what your background is. You don't even have to grow up here in the United States. You could be, you could get your citizenship through the military. So,
absolutely.
I mean, we take everybody. If you have a will and a drive to make a organization better, we want you.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, ma'am, for so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Again, your time is very valuable, and I do appreciate telling your story out there with your battle buddy back there. I do appreciate it. For our viewers, thank you for joining us. Stand by, ma'am. Thank you for joining us. If you want to know more about this broadcast, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You can hit us up underneath our station's page, Paso Robles Army Recruiting Center, and you can reach out and talk to any of our recruiters there. Me, Sergeant Green, Sergeant Easton, very capable recruiters. We can answer a question. Even if you're not from California, if you're watching this somewhere else, please leave a comment. If it's HR Pacific and you want to reach out to Major Hines, if you want to leave a comment or an email with me, I'll make sure that she gets the message. If it's something I can answer, I'll answer right on the spot. So please, if you have a comment, leave it below. We'll get it answered. But I'm going to give you my contact information real quick. Cell phone number is 805-226-0207. It's also on this dialogue. So if you look up or look down, wherever it's at, you'll have all of our contact information. Once again, we had Major Tiffany Hines. She is a 42 hotel. And see here if I can figure out how to work my system here. Thank you again for joining us for the Soldier of Hour. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Yay. Tell your kid to shout out. Say, hey, Fort Hood's crazy over there. Be safe. And again, I really appreciate it. Thank you, ma'am.
Absolutely.
I'll call you here in a second.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Got to go make the call. Hard work.